Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. Week 4 of the legislative session saw passionate calls for action on a variety of important topics. We start with education. Hundreds of supporters of school choice rallied at the Capitol on Tuesday. The rally was sponsored by Empower Mississippi, a pro-charter schools group. The state's big three Republican leaders, Governor Phil Bryant, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, and House Speaker Philip Gunn, spoke at the rally. They are calling for the expansion of school choice options for parents and students. Some public school advocates are opposed to the idea.
Look, hundreds of the kids gathered here today are from public school. This is not about any one system over another. It's not about public or private or charter. It's about all of the above, and giving parents to choose what makes best sense for them. So as education leaders in our state, as the political leadership makes decisions about how to spend education dollars, their goal is to make sure we educate kids. School choice is simply the best way to match students with the best school for them to learn in. And so it's not about one or the other, it's about all of the above.
Well, it hurts the public schools, of course, because if we lose 100 students in a school district, that's $500,000. That does not reduce the number of teachers, books, or buses that you need, because we don't pull them all out of one classroom. And you know, another thing is of course, when you talk about that and that choice model that seems to be appealing, it's just simply not the way democracy was planned to work or that it works. It's for the greater good of the people. I pay a lot of taxes that go to roads and bridges that I'll never see or drive on. And I think another example is there's many people that don't go to the public parks. That doesn't mean they get a better choice or that they get a voucher to pay for their country club. Just because you don't use a government service doesn't mean you don't benefit directly from it. And I think that's the point that's lost here.
Two bills, House Bill 1339 and Senate Bill 2623, call for allowing families to use public money to attend private schools, but it's too early to tell if those bills have enough support to pass. A bill under consideration in the House would give parents the right to decide not to vaccinate their child for religious reasons and still be able to enroll the child in school. Republican Representative Andy Gibson of Braxton held a hearing on Wednesday on House Bill 1505. The bill says parents or legal guardians would be given exemptions from immunization requirements of schools and licensed child care facilities when they object to immunization on the grounds that it conflicts with their religious beliefs. Physicians and parents testified about their children being harmed by vaccines, with some claiming they had developed autism as a result. The state health officer, Dr. Mary Currier, defended the state's requirement that children be immunized before enrolling in school. Here is some of the testimony from the hearing.
I'm a mother of a child who has suffered many adverse effects, several of which I see as a catechism teacher in my students, including ADD, ADHD, allergies, and learning disorders. My daughter has suffered with asthma, eczema, speech and language disorders, and fine motor issues, all of which were no prior family histories of. So scientifically, a lot of these disorders you would expect if there's a family history, but we had no family history of any of those. As I began to study the root cause of her multiple diagnoses, I learned of the medium from which many vaccines are grown. And as a Christian, as a Catholic, I cannot support this.
I'm a physician with a background in family medicine and the parent of a vaccine-injured child with autism. I've been a physician for 23 years now. For the past decade, I've worked in pharmaceutical research and development. I'm an expert consultant to the pharmaceutical industry, specifically in the area of drug safety and adverse events. Vaccines have serious adverse events and effects in many people, both children and adults, and there should be a choice wherever there is a risk. The autism rate for Mississippi children has skyrocketed to a 563% increase over the last decade versus a 75% increase nationally. Mississippi has the worst track record in the nation with regard to the health of its citizens. It's time for a change. Our children and adults deserve choices just like our healthier neighbors. Please help support Representative Andy Gibson and his co-authors on HB 1505.
I cannot imagine what it's like to have a child who has an issue like y'all have talked about. And I am very sorry and have a great deal of sympathy for you. I can't imagine what that's like. I worry about my children and my grandchildren and my daughters-in-law on a daily basis. And if I were you, I would want a reason for this to have happened. I would want that too. I understand that. It's not just for the children who are vaccinated that we have a school vaccine law. We have a school vaccine law like every other state, not just to protect those children, but to protect the people around them who can't be vaccinated, who are immunocompromised or who have some illness, and those children who are infants, who are less than a year of age, who are too young to be completely vaccinated and immune to these diseases. So by vaccinating as many children as possible, we're protecting those who can't be vaccinated because of medical reasons.
Mississippi has the highest rate of childhood vaccination in the U.S. Our state is just one of 3 in the nation without a religious vaccine exemption law. Law enforcement agencies in Mississippi say opioid abuse is at a critical level. Families who've lost a loved one to an opioid overdose and families who have someone struggling with addiction held a candlelight vigil on the south steps of the state capitol on Wednesday night. In Mississippi, more than 200 people died from overdosing on pain pills last year. Many at the vigil shared their personal stories about the impact of addiction. We spoke with some of them about what's being done to battle the problem and what more the state can do to help.
We want to share our message across Mississippi that recovery is possible, that we don't have to continue to lose loved ones every month, every day in Mississippi. Recovery is possible, and there are people around our state that are willing to help those that are struggling get on the path to recovery.
I have had close personal friends, people I consider brothers, who have suffered from alcohol addictions and opioid addictions, and it's just been my pleasure to be able to help them work their way through that. And you know, everyone in the state recognizes the problems that we have. Everyone in the legislature, our governor, lieutenant governor, our commissioner of public safety is here, Marshall Fisher tonight, and we all recognize the problems that occur with that.
I want them to understand. I want them to listen to us that have children, to not be ashamed that we can come and we can talk and we can start talking about this and start helping, respecting law, and start helping get behind our laws of the land, get behind our police officers, our highway patrolmen. And sometimes things like that I've noticed can really make a difference in a person's life. A lot of times they turn their back, oh, that person is just a drug addict. We're not going to help them. Well, you know what? They're somebody's child. It's my child. And sometimes consequences or drug court can save their life because I can't do it. I'm powerless. So yes, I want to start getting involved, and our legislator, our laws of the land get better, to get stronger.
There are several opioid-related bills under consideration in the House and Senate. One calls for the creation of a Mississippi Opioid Crisis Commission. Another would increase the penalties for possession of fentanyl and heroin and any overdose death related to those substances. Immigrants living in Mississippi say they don't want to be targets of aggressive policies against them. The Mississippi Immigrants' Rights Alliance held a rally at the Capitol on Wednesday. They are speaking out, claiming unfair treatment. The group supports House Bill 33, which would allow undocumented students to pay in-state tuition when attending college.
It's so important that we as a state grant liberties to our fellow citizens and our neighbors. It's so important that we recognize the value and worth of everyone. We have young people in our state who have been here since they were 1 and 2 years old. This is the only country that they know. We have young people who have been here who have exceeded in their education. They've done very, very well. However, when they attempt to enroll in college, they have to pay out-of-state tuition. And that is that is patently unfair.
Representative Sykes' bill is currently in committee. The American Civil Liberties Union is urging lawmakers to adopt an across-the-board policy for the use of body cameras by law enforcement agencies in Mississippi. The ACLU made its case for standardized guidelines for body cams on Wednesday. The cameras are worn and activated by officers as they interact with the public. The video becomes a visual record of what happened during police situations. There are currently 3 bills on the Senate side, all authored by Democrats, that would make new rules for using and accessing the video.
Across the state, varying law enforcement agencies have different policies. And so a citizen traversing across the state shouldn't have to know, okay, I have a right this place, but it's different than the right somewhere else. They also have a right to understand what they need to do to access film, if they're on the film. They have a right to privacy and how to ensure that their privacy rights are afforded. And so the bill that we're pushing out ensures that there is a standardized that the state push out standardized guidelines for how body cams are deployed. We're again not mandating the use of body cams, but if a law enforcement agency deploys a body camera, that it follows these policies.
The Mississippi Association of Chiefs of Police does not agree with the ACLU. The group's executive director, Ken Winter, says, quote, "The policies that the agencies have in place meet the legal and lawful parameters of the Constitution. What the ACLU is talking about is that people who have been videoed should have the right to view this or that." Well, actually, no, they don't, end quote. The head of the Institutions of Higher Learning in Mississippi says universities need more money to be able to compete with other states for students and faculty. IHL Commissioner Glenn Boyce testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee on Monday. He says recent funding cuts need to be restored for the state's 8 universities. IHL's budget has been reduced by $107 million since fiscal year 2016. IHL is asking for an $85 million budget increase. Boyce says the money would help with technology, campus repairs and renovations, and higher salaries for instructors.
We live in an incredibly competitive world, and it's competition for everything from literally police officers to students and everybody in between. And it's very, very important that we have the resources necessary so that our students can have the experience that they need to have to create the next economy. And it's all about this economy. It's all about the standard of living. It's all about driving the state forward. I've given you a handout, and that handout shows that on an economic impact study that I received in 2015, which was the latest that we had the best numbers for, this system created over 59,000 jobs, direct and indirect, in this state. This system by itself. For every dollar you invested in us, $3.21 were returned into the economy. This is a system that is driven to make Mississippi succeed. That's our primary mission, and we know we have to do it through our students.
Meanwhile, Governor Bryant's proposal to provide free tuition at community colleges is gaining momentum. House Bill 405, known as the Mississippi Career Tech Scholars Program, passed the House on Tuesday. The bill would create scholarships for students earning 2-year degrees in high-demand career fields. Let's get straight to the point now with views from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney with the Beria Jones Law Firm and a former member of the House. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of the Clearwater Group. Austin, Brandon, great to have you with us, as always, on At Issue. Let's go back to school choice first. First, we had vouchers for special needs kids. Now there's talk about expanding that to other kids. How much choice is actually necessary in education in Mississippi?
Well, listen, I always like to talk about priorities on this show, and I'm sitting on the right side of this table, and I want to talk about what I think the priorities for Republicans should be. And I think it's very clear that the Speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor has said, look, we're going to make education a priority for us. Now, that doesn't mean that Brandon and the Democrats in the state capitol are going to agree with how they prioritize education, but Republicans have said this is going to be one of our big priorities on how we fund it, on how we try to set up different policy techniques like the 3rd grade reading gate, but also of how we help school districts that we think are struggling, that just can't get their ducks in a row and get it fixed. And one of those is setting up things like charter schools. And charter schools, to some, is a vilification of public schools. Well, it's not meant to be. What it's meant to be, and how I see it as a Republican, is it gives an opportunity, and let's just use Jackson as an example because we're here in Jackson, and the Jackson public schools have really struggled at times, to give an opportunity for a kid who's maybe in kindergarten or elementary school or high school, an opportunity to get out of their failing school and to go to a charter school that's set up that will hopefully, in a long run, be a better situation for them, a better fit to educate them and get them ready for life after they graduate high school. So that's how I see this argument from the Republican side about school choice.
You know, I don't have any problem with people being empowered to make choices and being given an opportunity to make choices. I think where the Democratic Party is having issues with this in Mississippi is, why should public dollars subsidize that decision? If a portion of our public utilities bill subsidized Evian water, we would say, well, that doesn't seem right. I think similarly, public dollars subsidizing private schools is just a bit of a logical fallacy, and it's something that does have a real dollar impact in these schools that you just mentioned are struggling. So the answer to take money out of them and then to send it over to a charter school, by the way, which has no oversight by the state, no way to check on what they are teaching, what they are testing, how they are meeting the different educational goals that we've set out for our public schools. And frankly, you're entrusting that into a privately held company, typically for profit, without any track record in Mississippi. And so we're in some ways going down a blind alley in the greater context of what's going on elsewhere in our budget, which is we know that we're not able to put enough public school dollars into those schools now. And that's not even touching the argument that I know, Austin, you've made several times, that Republicans have put more money in succeeding years. Well, even Republicans agree we're not meeting our benchmarks. I mean, it might be better than bad, but it's still not where we want to hit our goal. And so in that context, to talk about diverting public dollars to subsidize a private company that's untested, unproven, and not regulated, I think is a big problem in a state like Mississippi.
Yeah, I love my friend across the table, but we just disagree on this, and we can disagree politely with each other. But, you know, I just got to be honest with you. I believe in competition, and I believe in competition with schools, and I believe in competition in education. And I will say charter schools is not for everybody. Madison public schools, they don't need charter schools. Rankin County, they don't need charter schools. Clinton, these school districts that are A and B school districts, there's no need to bring a charter school in there to compete. Where the folks that need competition and need charter schools are the places that are failing and have continuously failed. And I go and I look and I see what Representative Jay Hughes, who was interviewed on this show, and he was also interviewed earlier in the week, and I'm looking at my phone to read his quote. I mean, I don't think he speaks for all the Democrats here, because I just don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but his quote was saying, choose where you live. That's how you pick a school system, and if not, then make your local school better. Be a part of the solution, not leaving, and be a part of the problem. Just fundamentally disagree with Representative Hughes said. Not everybody lives in Oxford. Oxford's got two great public school systems, Lafayette County and Oxford. It's where my wife is from. And certainly not everybody has the opportunity to just pick up and leave and move from Jackson Public Schools or Humphreys counties or Yazoo County that are really poorly performing public schools to go somewhere else. But I think it's a good system. I hope it's a successful system. I will, 10-second pushback though. These are mostly all accredited, well-tested, well-versed entities that are getting this. Some are for profit, but I think most of them are non-profit entities that are doing this. And if they can't pass the test and elevate to C's and B's, then they ought to go. But we need to give them a little time to see.
Well, you said something there that I do agree with, and that is about engendering competition. And I think that's a good point. And I think we can agree on that as a policy goal. How do we engender good competition amongst our educative bodies? You know, I think part of the way we do that is to make sure that we're injecting as much resource and as many tools as we can into public schools, and I guess that's where the disagreement is.
Let's talk about vaccinations. Some in Mississippi pride themselves on the fact that Mississippi has the highest vaccination rate in the country among children, as we pointed out earlier in the program. But we got doctors on one side saying vaccinations can be harmful, doctors on the other side saying no, there's no proof that they're harmful. With which side are we to agree with?
You really don't have it that way, Wilson. The truth is an overwhelming majority of the medical community is on the side of requiring vaccinations prior to going into public schools. As a matter of fact, one of those international medical bookmarks that they look at when they're going across the globe to kind of test public health has to do with what your immunization system is. And so actually Mississippi is on the side of science. It's on the overwhelming side of what the American Medical Association and others support. Now, having said that, it said on the program that we're one of only 3 states without some religious exemption. I would be very curious to see what those exemptions look like and to see how narrowly carved out they are. There may be some validity there. I don't want to suggest that there's never a reason that you could have some exemption. That would seem, without knowing the details, a little heavy-handed. So I'd be curious to know what those bills look like in surrounding states and a little bit more about Representative Gibson's policy. I will say this, I'm a little skeptical about Representative Gibson simply because of his track record. This is a member of our legislature who has shown a real interest in sticking his nose into these various social issues, these divisive issues, and it always hasn't been for some general sense of the public good. He would be the first to tell you he's got an opinion, he's got an angle, and he works it. And that's one of the things that when you're talking about public health and you're talking about changing the way we administer public health in this state, I think we might need some, good vetting on this before it gets too far. And obviously, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, I don't have all the answers either. As the father of a 10 and a 12-year-old, and we're all fathers sitting around this table, it was very important to me to have my children vaccinated. My libertarian comes out me in just a little bit to say I don't want, government telling me what to do. But you said something there at the very end that really made me think, which was this is a public health issue. And that's a big deal. I mean, our children are going to school with other children, and I don't know. I really want to learn more about the issue. I want to learn more about what Andy's bill says. He's a really smart guy. Yeah, I mean, you're not always going to agree with him, but he is. You got to say he is a really smart guy. But I am proud that Mississippi leads the country in something, and it's not just being overweight and diabetic and poor health and income. We lead the nation in vaccination rates, and there are 3 states: California, West Virginia, and Mississippi, quite an odd trio there, that do not have any kind of religious opportunities to get out of vaccination. So I don't know.
I wonder if there are people who tune in on Friday night to get their scientific or religious advice from me and you. I hope not, but yeah. I do think from a scientific standpoint, but one of the basic things I did hear there that I thought Dr. Courier hit was sort of what you said, Austin. There's this real concern for those immunocompromised children, for kids that could be compromised. It's pretty clear that if they were exposed to some of these diseases that we're trying to inoculate our children against, we do have pretty firm footing, scientific footing, that could cause some pretty serious medical problems. So
even if they'd been vaccinated?
Well, I was saying that if they were exposed to children who weren't vaccinated but were carriers or so forth. So
it's a public health issue, and I just think with public health issues, you got to go slow. You got to make sure. So I think this is a multi-year conversation that they will have.
The institutions of higher learning asking for a lot of money for the coming year after having a cut. We've talked about learning, we've talked about education. This is on the higher level. There's limited money to go around, and it's hard to say no to a need for educational money. So what do you do?
That segment bothered me a lot. I mean, what it said was that over these several years, they've been chipped away at to the tune of $107 million, which has really cut into their ability to be competitive and to build the types of institutions that we all want to have here in Mississippi. That's a huge gap. I don't think that's saying anything all that crazy to mention that $107 million coming out of those institutions really matters. What they're asking for is that a percentage of that be restored. I hope our legislature can find a way to do that. But what this really is, and the reason I think it's worth pointing out, is that this is another snapshot in the overall picture of our state economy. It's not doing great. And this is another indication of that. And certainly I think Austin and I agree, we want to see our institutions of higher learning do well. We have 8 really excellent ones. We want to see them succeed. We want them to be competitive. And obviously we talk about our kids all the time. You and I spend a lot of time talking about K through 12. Well, something happens to them after they leave 12, and typically they go to school. We want them to go to great schools. We want them to go to great schools where they learn how to do great things and then stay in Mississippi. And so this is a huge part of the overall quality of life, overall picture of where Mississippi's heading.
Yeah, I don't know that you said anything I want to argue with. That was really good. Yeah, we do. And you know, I'm a member of my children's school. I'm a member of the board of my kids' school. And one of the things that we talk about a lot as members of the school board is how to keep costs, how to not let tuition go crazy. And I know that's an issue that these university presidents are fighting with. I mean, I doubt they're all sitting up there. Mark Keenum's not sitting in Starkville going, man, I can't wait to raise tuition rates for kids, whether they're coming from out of state or in state. But he and his administration's got to figure out a way to balance the budget. I think what I saw Briggs Hobson, who's the chairman of the IHL subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, and that's the committee that figures out how much money they're going to get for the universities, said, I feel like the economy's in better shape. I hope we don't have to make any cuts this year. And there's no question that leadership is paying attention to what these university presidents are saying. We'll try to help them as much as they can.
We'll let that be the last word. Thank you both. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week on At Issue.